Nordic hamstring curls are great for both building your hamstrings and making them more resilient to injury. Nordics are often used as an effective rehab exercise for hamstring injuries, but few people realise how good they are for increasing hamstring strength and performance. Nordics can notably assist in athletic activities that require speed and explosiveness, like sprinting and jumping. A lot of other videos on the interwebs will give you a bunch of variations for performing Nordic curls, but few will give you a progressive plan for actually achieving a full unassisted Nordic curl and applying progressive overload properly. This video is different though, and will be broken into 3 parts to give you everything you need to perform a full Nordic curl. These parts include the various setup options for performing Nordic curls, how to perform Nordic curls properly and the mistakes to avoid, and a proven plan for achieving your first full Nordic curl unassisted and beyond. If you're confident in some of these areas already, feel free to use the timestamps below to skip ahead to the relevant sections of interest. I'll also cover what to do when you hit a roadblock with your Nordic curl progressions, so make sure you stay tuned and don't go anywhere. Before attempting Nordic curls, you need to ensure you have the right setup and you know where and how to practice the exercise consistently. You can position yourself for the exercise with the ankles plantar flexed or dorsiflexed, and neither is right or wrong. You'll recruit the calves more in the latter version, but it is easier to set up and it does feel more comfortable for most people, so I've chosen to use this option throughout the video. To learn more about what the different foot positions mean for recruiting muscles differently during various leg curl exercises, check out my other video which is linked in the description. Here are some setup options for performing your Nordic curls. The first and arguably best option is a Nordic curl bench. It's specifically designed for the exercise and it's superior in comfort while also requiring no setup time. I also really like the hybrid Nordic incline bench due to its greater versatility, and you can use the incline function to progress your depth over time. You simply lower the bench in increments from incline to flat as your strength improves. If you have access to a Nordic bench, then power to you. If not, then here are some alternative setup methods you can use. A support arm in a rack with bar padding. Although not the most comfortable option, this is one of the easiest ones to set up. I personally like these roller rack attachments in place because they're not only comfortable and versatile, but they also save a ton of setup time compared to a loaded barbell, which is another option for Nordic curls. If you use a weighted barbell to anchor your feet, just make sure that it's at least heavy enough to hold your body weight, and also anchor the barbell in a rack or against something else that is sturdy so the bar doesn't move at all. You'll also need some bar padding for this option for obvious reasons. Using a weightlifting belt on a bench is also another great option for anchoring your ankles and performing Nordic curls. Just ensure the bench is heavy enough and doesn't tip with your weight. If you're training at home, another great option is using a doorway and a Nord stick as shown. Just be sure the door won't be opened by anybody on the other side, otherwise you best be wearing a helmet and a mouth guard. Having a training partner assist you is also another option. However, only use a training partner if you can rely on them to apply enough pressure to hold your ankles in place and prevent you from face planting. If you decide to use a training partner as your anchor, ensure they have their thighs up against the soles of your feet and their weight firmly over your ankles with their hands. A foam roller can also be helpful for keeping the ankles dorsiflexed if you choose to do your Nordic curls this way. No matter which of the aforementioned setups you use, it's imperative that you have something soft under your knees for protection that is a couple of inches thick. In choosing your setup, it's also beneficial to set up somewhere where you can attach bands behind you overhead. More on why this is so a little later on. Now that you're set up properly, let's look at the correct technique to use and the mistakes to look out for when executing Nordic curls. To perform Nordic curls correctly, you first have to ensure that you're positioned properly. Set up in a kneeling position with your knees shoulder width or narrower because the hamstrings activate better in narrower stances. Anchor your lower legs at the top of the Achilles and keep your feet in the same position each time. Rotating the legs and feet will emphasize different hamstring muscles over others. For instance, if your feet are turned in, this will emphasize the inner hamstring muscles, namely semitendinosus and semimembranosus, and if your feet are turned out, this will emphasize the outer hamstrings or the biceps femoris muscle. The neutral foot position offers balance development and will be the orientation of choice throughout this video. Keep your hips extended or slightly flexed as best as possible the entire exercise. With your abs engaged, initiate the exercise by visualizing your heels being driven hard towards your butt and maintain this tension throughout the movement. Lower yourself under control towards the floor and keep your spine and neck close to neutral the entire exercise. Avoid craning your neck as this reduces the range of motion. Drive hard out of the bottom position by squeezing your glutes and hamstrings whilst keeping your hips in a similar position. Flexing the hips not only reduces the lever arm and takes away tension, it also shuts off the hamstrings because you're engaging the hip flexors, which are an antagonist muscle group here. To prevent this, keep your glutes and abs engaged the entire time and avoid excessive arching in your lower back as this places unwarranted strain on your lumbar spine. You should only do a variation of the Nordic curl that is commensurate to your level of progress, while also making sure you keep the speed and tempo of your reps the same. This will also allow for consistent time under tension and progressive overload over time. Before getting into your Nordic curl training, we'll first cover some things that you need to know before diving in. Firstly, for the full Nordic reps that you'll be performing in the program, you will need around 4 resistance bands. These should vary from around 1 1/4 of an inch thick down to 1/4 of an inch thick in 1/4 inch increments, with resistance halving for each subsequently smaller band. If you're heavier, you may need some more thicker bands, or you may even get away with simply combining smaller bands with larger bands to provide added assistance. Secondly, you'll be required to perform a set of negatives or eccentrics as part of the program. Negatives are when you perform the lowering phase of an exercise, but complete the concentric or up phase with assistance. Negatives are one of the best ways to increase strength for movements that we cannot perform yet, because our muscles are naturally stronger when lengthening than they are when shortening against resistance. Hence, during negatives, we can apply more overload and better prepare the muscles for adopting full loading concentrically in the future. Just like with normal reps though, it is essential that with negatives that we keep the descent even and go the same speed at each part of the range of motion. This way we can strengthen each part of the range of motion adequately. The negative reps in the program I'll introduce you to soon will require a 5 to 6 second lowering phase before you push yourself back up to the starting position as hard as you can. Remember, it's the lengthening and lowering aspect that we're trying to work with our negatives, not the concentric up phase of the exercise. To progress your Nordic curls to the point where you can do your reps unassisted up and down, negatives usually don't work in isolation because you cannot gauge how hard you push yourself up each time and measure the overload. Due to the overloading nature of negative reps, these can cause a lot of muscle damage and can be a big stressor on the hamstrings, especially if you're unfamiliar to Nordic curls or generally have weaker hamstrings. This is part of the reason why I have limited negatives to just 1 set in the program, and why I recommend that you don't go more than 1 band lighter for your eccentric work. As you progress towards full Nordic curls unassisted, you can complete the negatives using added weight in 2.5 kg or 5 pound increments to further increase your number of bodyweight reps. It may be tempting to do more than 1 set of negatives or more than is required in the program that I'm about to show you, however you won't get too much more benefit from doing so. Instead, you'll just be annihilating your hamstrings rather than systematically developing and strengthening them over time. Because the hamstrings have a higher, faster twitch muscle fiber composition, I generally don't like to go over 8 reps or so with Nordic curls due to the fact that hamstrings will get exhausted quite quickly. The following program factors these elements in, both in terms of intensity and volume. First up, you'll perform full Nordic curls for 3 sets of 4 to 8 reps, utilising bands or loading appropriate to your level of progress. Be sure not to go to muscular failure on your full Nordics, at least until your last set. Once you can perform 8 reps across all 3 sets, it's time to progress to the next level or lightest resistance band and build your reps up again and repeat the process. After you've completed all your sets of full Nordic curls, you then need to do 1 set of negatives for 4 to 8 reps with a 5 to 6 second lowering phase. Be sure to push yourself up from the bottom and back to the starting position as quickly as you can with these, and also make sure that you use a resistance band appropriate to the lowering time target if you cannot execute your negatives with just your body weight. Again, progress to lighter bands and eventually body weight once you can hit the target lowering time for 8 repetitions. You should take at least 3 minutes rest between all sets in the above program, and if you're close to body weight with your negatives, or you can perform more than 3 sets of 8 reps of full Nordic curls, then simply add external weight in 2.5 kg or 5 pound increments and repeat the process. Do this program twice per week, and if you're struggling to recover and you're not progressing, do it every 5 days. If you follow this plan along with the guidelines I mentioned, you should be able to achieve a full Nordic curl in anywhere from 3 to 9 months, depending on your starting point and your established hamstring strength. I would argue that most people try to progress too quickly with their Nordic curls when they should be trying to simply add a rep to each set of every workout and go to a new band only when they can perform 8 reps with good form. With that said, if you're doing everything right and as recommended, but find yourself at a roadblock with your progress, you can apply the following troubleshooting measures. When developing your Nordic curls, ensure the variables are kept the same. For instance, keep the band anchored at the same height and on the same part of the body each time. Don't put the band around your chest one day and then overhead with outstretched arms the next. This will alter the stretch and the resistance on the band. Also, as previously mentioned in the program section, don't go to muscular failure in your standard sets of full Nordics. This is because there is a serious drop-off point when you go to failure on this exercise and you overexhaust your hamstrings. For instance, in your first set, if you do 7 reps but push for an 8th and go to muscular failure, you'll be lucky to get 5 reps in the subsequent sets, and you'll likely get a total of around 18 reps for all your work sets. However, if you stopped short of failure and instead did 7 reps in your first set, you would likely get a similar number of reps out on your second and third sets and get around 21 reps total for your work sets. That's more than 15% more total reps. Remember that the goal is to build both the strength and the work capacity of your hamstrings and to not simply annihilate them by going to failure. Going to failure is permissible only on the last set of negatives, but certainly not during all your work sets. Another thing you can do to inadvertently help your Nordic curls is to use some specific auxiliary exercises. Although the following exercises won't directly improve your Nordic curl motion, they can help indirectly by helping you maintain stronger and more lengthened hamstrings. The hamstrings work to both curl the lower leg and extend the hip. Hence, it's wise to also incorporate some exercises regularly for the latter function, such as stiff leg deadlift and back extension variations, to name a few. If you're like most people who sit at a desk all day, you likely have many adhesions from sitting with your hamstrings in a shortened state for long periods of time. Add intense exercises like Nordic curls to this, and your hamstrings can really start to tighten up. Hence, triggering your hamstrings with a massage ball or similar can help release your hamstrings and restore proper length and tension to the area. This soft tissue work will not only make your hamstrings feel better, but will also enable them to perform better as well. Try these troubleshooting methods the next time you get stuck with your Nordic curl progress, and you'll be surprised with how well your hamstrings respond. Are there other ways to progress to full Nordic curls unassisted? Sure. Progression versions like stacking mats and increasing the range of motion gradually over time without bands do work for achieving full Nordic curls because the variable is range of motion, and this is systematically being increased. However, for most people, this requires a stockpile of mats and a setup that is harder to access consistently compared to having their own set of bands that they can carry around anywhere. If you stick to this proven plan, you will perform a full Nordic curl unassisted one day, and in the process improve your hamstring strength and performance accordingly. Be sure to keep me up to speed with your progress in the comment section below, and when you reach a full Nordic curl unassisted, feel free to send me a video of it via the link in the description. That's all from me. Make sure you share this video with your training partner or someone else who you feel would benefit from it, and I will see you next time.